Welcome to Voices and Visionaries, the podcast featuring the female forces in sports media. I'm Kelly Burke, and joining me today is Khristina Williams, the founder of Girls Talk Sports TV and a Forbes 30 Under 30 sports honoree. Khristina, I'm so glad we could connect. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much, Kelly, for having me today. I'm super excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. We are taping this a day after the inauguration. I know for myself, yesterday, it was a monumental day for all women, and it was emotional. What were your emotions yesterday watching the first female and woman of color be sworn in as Vice President of the United States?
Man, I just can't believe that in my lifetime, I've got to witness the first Black president of the United States and also the first woman of color become Vice President of the United States. I mean, like you said, it was a very historical and symbolic day yesterday. It just goes to show you that the possibilities are limitless and that you can do whatever you put your mind to. And so kudos to Kamala and Joe Biden.
Speaking of limitless, I'm glad we're talking about this because you are an example of someone who has really been limitless so far in your career. Many people have big ideas, but they fail to actually execute on them. In 2018, you launched the digital media outlet Girls Talk Sports TV. What was the turning point for you that really pushed that idea and concept into reality for you?
For me, it was sort of natural to want to come up with the concept and then take it right to action because I was super passionate about basketball. I've always been involved with the sport, whether playing or coaching or like just being around the sport and the culture here in New York City. And so for me, it started out actually because I was supposed to launch a women's basketball summer tournament here in New York City. Because a lot of my friends, we like to play basketball, but there's a lack of like open runs for women or tournaments. And so that kind of got squashed. That idea kind of failed just because like it's hard to access a lot of different things here in New York City in terms of getting space and wanted to do something like that. And so a few weeks after that, I spoke to a lot of my friends and they're like, well, actually, we want to learn how we can, make a career off the court. And so I just joined my two passions of journalism, because I went to school for journalism, and sports, just being someone who played, who coached the game, and married those two things together. And Girls Talk Sports TV was kind of born in 2018. And one of the things that was also important to me when I created my platform was to give a voice and visibility to women in sports, mainly because when I watched sports broadcasts, you would see women used as the token on an all-male sports broadcast or, just pushed off as sideline reporters. And so for me, it's really important to have that voice at the front and center of sports culture. And yeah, that's what Girls Talk Sports TV is, and that's how it was created.
How hard was it in its infancy as you were trying to get it off the ground and build contacts and build sources?
When I first got started out, I started where I was, right? So like in my local community. So I'm from New York City, and in New York, there's a lot of different basketball tournaments happening. There's a lot of different events going on. And so I started where I was. And so Dyckman basketball is one of the biggest street tournaments here in New York City, where a lot of NBA players come in the off season to play. And so I reached out to Dyckman on Instagram and I was like, hey, I'm a reporter and I want to start getting into sports. I started this company, Girls Talk Sports TV, and I'm wondering if I can cover those games. Mm-hmm. And so Dyckman, they really took me under their wing in 2018, but also they let me do sideline reporting for Dyckman basketball during the summer. And so that was super dope.
Nice.
Crazy atmosphere. And then also just networking where I was. So like in the city, I attended a lot of different open runs that was hosted by Nike, some of my friends in the industry. And so I reached out to those girls, like just reaching across to the women on the left and right of me and saying, hey, I have this idea and I want to execute it. Do you guys want to like kind of join in on it? And one of the women I actually met by doing that was Ari Chambers of Highlight Her.
Oh yeah, nice.
So she also made the Forbes 30 under 30 sports list. And so in 2018, her and I, we met up in Harlem at Whole Foods, and we had lunch and just discussed, our ideas and our vision about how we wanted to just change the game for women's sports. And so in 2018, this is prior to her going to Bleacher Report, she actually jumped on to Girls Talk Sports TV and was my WNBA correspondent. And then she went on to Bleacher Report, where she is now. And so it's been crazy to watch both of our journeys happen, just from that one meeting in Whole Foods and just seeing how we both are like coming up together in the women's sports media industry. It's been super dope.
How important is that representation? One thing that I had Megan McPeak on my podcast a couple months ago, and we talked about when she was growing up, and she's obviously a play-by-play, there was no women doing play-by-play, but there was definitely no Black women doing play-by-play.
Right.
And so it's that whole thing, if you can see it, you can be it. So to have somebody like Ari and all the women doing it now, how much of an impact has that made on you and also what you're trying to do?
For me, I'm just a woman who grew up in Harlem, New York, a place where, you don't really see people where I'm from, working in the sports industry or be successful in the sports industry, yet alone not someone who's created their own company and like has had the success that I've had. So for me, reaching this pinnacle of success, it means everything. And for me, it's all about giving back or just inspiring people to be able to, bet on themselves, but also just believe that they can do anything that they want to do as well. And so the representation, what does it mean to me? It means that every young Black girl, every young Black boy who may want to get into sports, that now they have the opportunity because, I'm helping to open doors for them. And so that's that means, just opening the door for the next generation.
Representation is it's an ongoing challenge, especially in the last 8 to 10 months. We've seen some signs of progress that our industry in particular, which has sort of been archaic in the way it handles representation, it's starting to change. But how do we ensure that progress becomes the new standard going forward?
I think in order to show progress, we need to diversify newsrooms. I mean, that's like the biggest thing, and hire people of color in decision-making positions, right? Especially when I speak about the WNBA a lot, that league is 80% Black, and you have the LGBTQ representation as well. So I think that the people who are telling the stories need to be reflective of that as well. And, just my experience coming up as someone who's independent, as a woman of color in this industry, one of the hardest things is access sometimes, or just like, gaining that credibility. And so I feel like a lot of that has to do with the gatekeepers, the people in charge. And I feel like if we just diversify those positions, then it'll be reflective of, the narratives that are portrayed in the media, but also of the culture. And it also help with progress. And that's my thoughts on that.
How full circle have things come from you for you? I would imagine that you're getting younger women now reaching out to you, asking for advice, especially as your star continues to rise and you continue to have more and more success. And just for them to have that example of you can go the non-traditional route and you can be successful doing it.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people think that in order to be successful, you need this huge platform, or you need to have like $1 million and a blue check on Instagram to make a difference. But I'm the living example, right? Like, you don't need all of those things. You can literally just start where you are with what you have in your hand, and everything else will come after. I think that it's amazing that all of these younger people are now reaching out to me for advice. How can they get started and different things like that? That means that like I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. I'm living out my purpose. And so I'm always going to be that person to reach back out to the next generation and definitely do what I can, use my resources to help them grow in this industry, because that's why I started my company in the first place.
Why do you think your digital media outlet, Girls Talk Sports TV, and now the Kicking It with Khristina podcast that you have on there have both been so successful?
I think that people want content that is authentic and real, especially now that we're in this pandemic and communication has just been such a shaky thing during this chaotic time. I think that people want to relate to athletes in a humanistic way. And you get that on Girls Talk Sports TV. You see a kind of like a 360 view of the players. You see the latest news. You see what they're working on off the court. You just see them in different perspectives and light. And so I think that's why people resonate with the material on Girls Talk Sports TV and Kicking It with Khristina, especially when we talk about visibility, right? Women's sports only receives 4% of all media coverage, 1% of sponsorship dollars. And I think that one of the reasons why is because of the lack of media coverage as well, and like investing into women's sports and things like that. So many different factors play into that statistic, but it also comes down to just like being real. Like people can't embrace what they don't see, and so with Girls Talk Sports TV, you're gonna see it all. And Kicking It with Khristina, you're gonna hear those half-hour conversations with players that you may have not thought of, that you want to get to know. And so I think that that's why it's been successful, because people can connect not only with the brand, but with me as a person. I'm always like, I'm available, I'm accessible to all of our followers. I call them supporters and not fans. I love the Girls Talk Sports TV tribe. And so not only can they connect with me, Khristina, the person, but they can connect with the brand and the content as well.
I love that you call them supporters and not fans, because that is so true.
Yeah, I mean, the Girls Talk Sports TV tribe, they really drive everything. Very special group of people. And, you know, it's growing and growing and growing. But they definitely fight for me in spaces, especially in the digital space. WNBA Twitter is such a great thing. I absolutely love it. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, especially in the last, I think, 10 months or so, to grow in this community and just be a part of something that's great, because, you know, the interest in women's sports is growing. Mm-hmm. There is a shift in women's sports coverage, and I just think that it's only going to get better.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up, because it feels like to me this is sort of a pivotal moment, especially for the WNBA right now, to capitalize on the record ratings they had last summer, the influence they've had in the presidential election, but then in the Senate runoffs in Georgia. So what does the WNBA need to do, and where do they need to go from here in order to take that next step with their visibility and their brand and their media coverage?
Absolutely. Well, the league is already taking those steps and continuing to build that momentum. They've already hired their first ever chief marketing officer in Phil Cook, who has previous experience at Nike. So I'm super excited in that sense to see what's happening, but also with the CBA that was released last year, there's a lot of initiatives going into like player development and things like that to get the game more visible or to tell the stories of the athletes more. So the league has already taken the steps. They've also announced that they will release a documentary in collaboration with ESPN, produced by Chinea Gumake Spark. So we will get to see everything that had happened during the 2020 Wobble season. So, I mean, the future is super, super bright for the league, and they are already making moves to just provide that access and coverage and visibility.
It's just interesting because you would think being in a pandemic, even though you wanted, obviously you're going to tune in and watch, but there's nothing quite like sometimes being at the WNBA games in person, especially in certain markets where there's such big fan support. But it was so fun to watch on TV last summer, and just especially that it was on ABC so much.
Absolutely. I mean, last season, the broadcasting schedule definitely increased, and it was great to actually hear what the players had to say on the court, give them a little personality. But, you know, I did talk to a lot of players during the season. They talked about how it was different to have to shift in a space where, you know, you're used to having fans to hype you up and things like that. And then now you have no fans. And so some players kind of joked around and said it felt like a scrimmage or a practice when they were playing during the season. But yeah, definitely. It was interesting to see the games, just to hear like Diana Taurasi like talk crap, or like, you know, just different players and personalities and things like that. So I felt like, yeah, it sucked that fans couldn't be there this season, but we got to, you know a lot of new players and personalities. So it definitely was like a win-win situation in that sense.
You've said in the past that breaking into sports media was a real challenge for you. And that was despite you had previous journalism experience. What biggest frustrations that you went through just in looking for that first door to open for you?
Well, I want to start this by saying delay is not denial. You know what I mean? I've always felt on my heart that I was always supposed to create something. And, you know, when you get those feelings, you just push it aside, push it aside. You feel like you're not good enough. You feel like you don't have it all together. And so, you know, I remember when I wanted to pivot from entertainment and fashion into the sports industry just to get back to what I love most, and getting rejected like crazy. No opportunities. No one would call me back, you know. And so, you know, it hurt. And so I used that instead of like waiting for someone to give me opportunity or using the rejection as like something to sulk in. I just said, well, I'm going to create my own thing. You know, I looked at people like Taylor Rooks, who in college, she created her own blog and then she got hired at SNY. I looked at Omar from House of Highlights and how he started his own digital platform, and Bleacher Report eventually took it over. And so I feel like also what motivated me was that the shift in traditional journalism is changing. Like there's a shift in journalism, right? People are now resonating with like media personalities. Everything is going digital. And so it was like the perfect time to start my own thing. But just really, for me, it was just getting out of my own head and just really believing that I could put the content out there myself and then everything else will happen now. So now those big companies who kind of rejected me are now looking at my platform as inspiration or to find their next big story on the WNBA. And so now we get to collaborate and it's amazing. But it was just me being afraid of taking my own first step and feeling that, you know, I had to be under someone else in order to be successful. I think success looks different for everyone. And for me, I had to take that first leap of faith on my own in order to make things happen. And so it'll be different for everyone. But for me, that was like my personal journey of, all right, keep getting rejected. What's next? And for me, the next move was just to create my own platform.
What helped you take that step to quiet the voices in your head to finally be like, okay, I'm going for it?
Having a good support system. I remember when like the name Girls Talk Sports TV came in my head, I like texted my two friends who lived in LA. So it was 6 a.m. New York time, 3 a.m. their time. And I'm like, oh my God, I just came up with a name for a sports blog. What do you think about Girls Talk Sports TV 2? And they're like, no, that sounds horrible. I was like, wait, Girls Talk Sports TV. And like going, and I'm like, I'm waking you guys up because like a light bulb came off in my head. And they like listened to me. I thank them that they listened to my crazy ideas and kind of encouraged me to just go for it. And that I had nothing to lose when I was going to take this step of faith. So just, I think being grounded in yourself and faith, but also having those good people around you who can motivate you and challenge you to do something great.
You are someone that you've been using your voice for good since the 5th grade. I think back to a story I read about you that in 5th grade, you realized there was not a girls basketball team at your school. There's only a boys team. And so you advocated to get a girls basketball team. How did speaking up, even back then, help to really build that muscle for you of taking risks?
Well, when I was doing that interview for that particular article, we were talking, I was like, wait, when I was younger, actually, I attended like this summer program where we actually did peace marches every summer. And they kind of like taught us how to use our voices to make a good change and make an impact. And so I remember going back to school and seeing that, you know, we had a boys basketball team, but not a girls basketball team. And at that time I was interested in basketball, but you know, there was barely any sports leagues for youth girls back then. And I was just like, why don't we have a girls basketball team? We have a cheerleading squad, but we don't have a basketball team. So I remember like bugging my principal and the basketball coach at the time, like to start it. And they're like, oh, you're too young. Like we can't start. We don't have enough girls, like all the excuses. And then when I got to 6th grade, I kind of recruited some girls and like, hey, teach us how to play. Like we will, you know, like whatever. And so I don't know. I just think that I'm thankful for my experiences as a kid where I was exposed to being able to use my voice to make a difference. And it kind of shaped me into the woman that I am today, using my platform beyond just news updates and things like that, but to really use it to not only amplify the voices of athletes, but to speak to real experiences that are happening in the world. One of the things that I was able to do last summer, which was kind of crazy and bizarre now that I think about it, was go on a march with Tamika Catchings, Natalie Achanwa, and Stephanie Mavunga from the Indiana Fever in Chicago.
Awesome.
And like, I was like, wait, what? Is this really happening? Like, I'm in Indiana marching with these women. Like, so the WNBA and their social justice movement kind of motivated me to want to get out there, to use my platform and voice to also make a change, and knowing that it's bigger than basketball, it's bigger than this media space, and just recognizing that when you have a platform, you should use it for good.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the main thing. We all have a voice, and no voice is too small. I think that that's super important to realize. Like, as long as you can speak and you have a voice, use it, use it, use it.
I think that's so important, Khristina, because I can, and I'll just speak from my experience. I think we sort of have gone through this evolution now where so many of us in this industry are not sticking to sports anymore. But up until, honestly, for me, up until this spring, when Ahmaud Arbery happened, when Breonna Taylor, when George Floyd, I was somebody that I was always supportive of all of my friends of color. And I think I was always afraid to use my voice. Like, I just didn't know how to do it properly. And plus it was such, for so long in our industry, it was such a no-no. And I think now it's like, if you're not using your voice for positive change and to advocate for your colleagues and your friends out there, you shouldn't even be in the industry.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad, like, it just feels like you were ahead of your time. And I know that it wasn't intentionally necessarily. It's some of your experiences that you've had in life. But I think somebody like you is such a role model, and so important for someone like me that has had different experiences in my life than you have. You're helping somebody like me to see that it's so important that we all advocate for this positive change.
Absolutely. And I thank you for your work and for just even listening out on the issues that are happening today. In our industry, it is unheard of. You know, they tell us to just stick to sports, especially as women, when we have so many different things against us. Yeah. But then you see leaders like Jamil Hill, Carrie Champion, who are not sticking to sports. You see Maya Moore, who forewent 2 WNBA seasons to focus on criminal justice reform. And some of the WNBA players who have opted out to focus on voter suppression and the Georgia Senate runoff elections, which helped flip the Senate. You know what I mean? So it's like, how do you sit down and watch that and just speculate on the sidelines and not want to jump in the game and be a part of it? And so I think that, like you said, by seeing other people, it inspires more people to speak up and speak out and use their voices to, highlight what's happening in the world. It's like, you can't ignore what's happening. I understand that sports is something that we use for entertainment, but also those athletes are human, just like you and I. Yeah. And, they have life experiences as well, and we should highlight that as well.
In the past, some of us have felt like, I can't speak to something that I haven't had that experience. Like, it's not my place to do, but it's like you go through this transformation where you're like, no, it's my responsibility. Like, I need to speak, even if I haven't personally gone through it. Like, I'm friends with these people, I work with these people, I'm colleagues with these people. Like, we all have to be allies together and working together towards this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, part of allyship is not only listening, but using your voice to call out when something is not right. That's how we see change as well. And so I think that it's important that if people want to be allies, that they also use their voice to call out something that is not okay and wrong as well.
You mentioned earlier in our conversation that you started in entertainment and fashion. How did that background help you as you made the transition to sports?
That background helped me because when I was I want to say my first few years of school and right out of high school, a friend of mine, she was like a fashion model, and she was going all over the world, like Paris, Milan, whatever. And we were super cool friends. And she hit me up one day in a text, and she was like, hey, I'm actually flying to Paris for a runway show. And I had a gig, but, I can't really make it. And she was like, I'm really cool with the producer. I know you wanted to get into fashion reporting. do you think that you can do this? And I was like, I don't know about that. I don't have any experience in reporting. And this is like 2012 or something. It was like a long time ago. But she trusted me. So I went in, I did an audition. I actually grew up a theater kid as well. So studied theater, visual arts, just I have a diversified background in like the arts. So I just used like my acting lessons to kind of wing it during the audition for Fashion One. And then, so basically what I've learned is it taught me how to be a reporter, how to find something that is newsworthy, how to network with people, which is super important. And that experience there, it really just prepared me for what I'm doing right now. Especially that I have my own company, which is a digital news organization. It just prepared me for all of what I'm doing now, and also prepared me to how to teach others to do what I'm doing as well.
You were recently named one of the Forbes 30 under 30 in the sports category, which is a huge, I mean, it's a huge deal. How does that honor validate this unique journey that you have forged for yourself?
Honestly, I'm still like, oh my God, I made Forbes 30 under 30. That was actually one of the, like, I read a list of goals that I want to achieve in my life, and that was actually one of them. And so just to be recognized by Forbes and under the prestigious 30 under 30 list, it means everything to me. One, the work is not done. I still have a long way to go. But for me, as a woman who grew up in Harlem, New York, to make the Forbes 30 under 30 list, for people to see the vision and what I'm creating, to believe in what I'm doing, it means everything. And also it just inspires someone who may be in my position that I was in 2 years ago, where they, are on the fence about creating something, where they just don't know if they should get started. Like, if I can do it, you can definitely do it. Like, there's nothing to be afraid of. Just take that first step, and literally everything else will happen. With consistency and just putting in the work, everything else will happen. So I still can't believe that I made that list. Every day I'm pinching myself like, oh my God, like I really made the Forbes 30 under 30 list. But yeah, it means everything, especially as a woman of color. To make that list, 49% of the listers this year were people of color, 40% women. And so just to see that, we are shattering that ceiling, we are making a difference, but also with women's sports coverage, 5 people who are involved with the WNBA actually made the list. It was myself, Ari, and 3 of the players. And so that just means that the league is growing, people are taking notice, and we are not slowing down.
What was your family's reaction?
How did I find out? So I found out through my friend Dorothy Gentry. She texted me at like 7 a.m. like, oh my God, check the list. And I'm like, what? I'm like half asleep. And I like look, and I'm like, wait, did they make a mistake? Like, what? Because I like see Aisha Wilson, and it's like Khristina Williams, and I'm like, oh, like I really made the list. Like half of the listeners we found out on social media before we got the email from Forbes.
Oh, so, really? Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so a lot of our friends and family actually told us before Forbes could email us and say, hey, you made the list. So we were all like, oh, like we made the Forbes 30. My family was super, super proud of me. They've been seeing how hard I've been working over the years, grinding out, my ups, my downs, and everything in between. And so, they told me that they were super proud of me, that I made the list, and, just supported me every step of the way.
Yeah. I hope you went out and like framed, like, that.
I have a plaque, but it's actually coming. So I can't really show it now, but it's actually coming. So I have a Forbes 30 under 30 plaque, but just to see my name in that magazine amongst all of the, people who were also named to the list, it just shows that like there's more to come. The best is yet to come. And I'm super excited, not only for me, but just for women in sports in general.
You've broken a number of WNBA stories, and a couple that come to mind, the WNBA trademarking wobble, Converse covering Natasha Cloud's salary in 2020, to name a few. Being from a non-traditional media outlet, how have you gone about developing sources and earning the trust, frankly, of league executives and players?
When people see that you're consistent, you gain their trust. but also I can relate to the athletes as a Black woman, as someone who, is probably going through some of the same things that they're going through. And so, you just develop those relationships. When we were able to be in person, a lot of the players, they saw myself and also like my friends and colleagues in the locker room. The media industry for the WNBA is so small, and grassroots media outlets is the heart of the media coverage for the league. And so the players take notice when you're showing up to every game. I remember when we first started, I would come and Ari and I would shoot on our cell phones, like so
really?
crazy, like how much we've grown from like taking the train to Westchester and recording holding each other's phones to get, coverage or whatever. And to see how much we've grown, like now we have crews and whatever. But the players see that. They see that you care about what they're doing. They see that you value them as athletes. And so when you do that, they help you out as well. And so that's how I've been able to gain those trusted relationships where people come to me and say, hey, this is happening, and I'm able to kind of break that news. But also, I think that it's important to see diversity in who's breaking the news. I know on the NBA side, you have Shams, you have Woj, but on the WNBA side, you see a number of people breaking the news: Rachel Galligan, Howard Magdal, Ari Chambers, myself. And so just seeing that diversity and that spectrum of different people being able to break the news is something special as well.
What's your long-term vision for Girls Talk Sports TV?
My long-term vision for Girls Talk Sports TV, well, I'm just going to be biased and say become the #1 media outlet for women's basketball. Like, I want to be the place where people come first. I mean, a lot of people already tell me that, they come to my outlet before like an ESPN or whatever, but I just really want to grow bigger, amplify the stories of the athletes more, and just help out more women who are thinking about getting into the sports media realm. Hopefully produce some documentaries, maybe write a few books, but I just see Girls Talk Sports TV growing so big in the future.
It's amazing. I love that you have that as a goal. I think it's totally achievable.
Thank you so much, Kelly.
What's interesting with what you're doing is that you have to be the whole package in terms of the website, like the business side of it, trying to monetize it. It's stuff like that a traditional media outlet who has their own salespeople and like somebody handling the website, they have all these different people doing stuff. But you essentially, when you're starting this, like you had to know how to do everything, and you had to sort of put your business hat on too. So how did you learn how to do some of the stuff that you frankly maybe didn't have any experience with?
I thank God for my college degree. Just having that journalism degree taught me a lot of different things: how to edit, how to code, which is super cool, how to shoot, how to produce, how to write broadcast scripts, things like that. And so I'm one of the people who just use my college degree. Whenever I was unable to do something myself, I outsource and hire people who could do it for me. I now have an agent, so they handle all of that stuff as well in terms of business on the business side. But just when I first got started, it was just I feel like everything that I've ever experienced in my life kind of connected the dots and came full circle when I started my own platform. Why did I have to do this? Why did I have to do event production? It was all because I was going to eventually create my own platform without even knowing it. You know what I mean? So all of my past experiences definitely helped me to be able to handle those things. And then, like I said, once I was not able to execute something myself, I would hire other people to do it. Because, you can't do everything yourself. You have to use other people and give other people light. So I do have a directory and a list of people that I hire for photographers, graphic artists, videographers, things like that. And they're behind the scenes. So I know you see most of just only me, but I do have people that actually help out, and I want to shout them out. Shout out to Marcus. Shout out to Oscar, Jada, Marjorie, Kelly, Ashley Washburn, Yodit, all of you guys. I know I'm forgetting names, but thank you so much for helping me over the years to create this platform and be a part of something special.
And finally, what advice would you have to women out there trying to distinguish themselves in our industry?
my advice to women who are trying to distinguish themselves in this industry is don't box yourself in. Also, don't listen to what other people have to say. There are dream killers out there. Just listen to your instinct. Trust that you have everything that you need in order to make that first step and be successful, and bet on yourself.
Love that. Anything else that I haven't asked you that you want to share or you think we should know?
I think that's it. We covered almost everything.
Well, thank you for taking the time to do this. I love all the work that you're doing. I love how you're blazing trails in our industry. And I just look forward to continuing to support your work and to cheer you on.
Thank you so much, Kelly. This was a lot of fun, and I appreciate you inviting me onto your platform to just speak and chat.